So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Natalie Clark, who's CEO at Simon on the Streets. So, firstly, Natalie, thank you for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Simon on the Streets, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
No problem, Chris, and thanks for having me. Yeah, so I'm
You're
Natalie
welcome.
Clark. I'm the CEO for Simon on the Streets, and we're a charity predominantly helping people in Leeds to fight homelessness, whether that's people who are rough sleeping, whether that's people who are in accommodation but are struggling to stay in that accommodation because homelessness is very, very complex. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit
Yeah,
on this podcast. And we basically provide really intense emotional and practical support to people, and we are highly skilled and trained in trauma, addictions, mental health, and we really work to advocate for the people we support. So we our mission statement is providing hope to those without a voice, and that's
brilliant.
really what we do. It is all about providing hope and letting people know that they can rebuild their lives after whatever trauma they've been through.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, my first question that comes to mind is is the situation improving or not improving at the moment, Natalie? Would you say?
Sadly not. Really, as a charity, our aim is not to be here and not to be
Yeah,
needed. And I think, sadly, that's a long, long way away. The government's had various ambitions over the last few years about ending homelessness. Now they're talking about halving homelessness.
right.
So you can see straight away that the picture is really problematic, and rising numbers of homelessness people are just beyond what those expectations would be. So we're working to try and work with as many people as we can, support as many people as we can. But our charity is built on fundraising, corporate support, and bids and grants. So we're doing as much as we can, but we know that there's more support that we need to give, and the capacity of our team is hard, because obviously financially charities are generally struggling because the economy has taken a
Yes.
massive hit, and everybody's struggling, and we get that. So we're doing what we can for the people that we can support in our local area.
Yeah. Yeah. It was clear the question because you'd like to think things would be improving, but yeah, it's a very sad state of affairs, really, isn't it? That we can't um, have a country. We can't be a country, preferably without homelessness, as you rightly said.
Yeah.
And I would imagine what you do must be both challenging and rewarding in different proportions, but hopefully equally amounts.
Absolutely. I mean, interestingly, we celebrated our 25th anniversary last year. And it was a
Congratulations.
really difficult one, because when we were talking about, how do we celebrate, it was like, just seems wrong to be
Yes, I
celebrating the
understand.
25 years we've been here and we've been needed, and actually we're going to be here for a lot longer. And so it was a real tough one for us as a charity, saying, well, what do we do about that? And actually what we felt was really important was celebrating the work and
Yes,
celebrating the lives that we've changed, and over the last 25 years. So as you say, the work is really challenging. Homeless is really complex. It's made up of so many different facets, in terms of, the immediate need that people might see is, well, we give people accommodation. That's often the start of someone's journey. And it's a long, long road, and the
yeah,
support that people need is really high level. So that is really challenging. We've had some really challenging situations in the last few years with the rise and the changes in drugs and the different drugs that people are taking, because we do work with a lot of people who are in addiction, and that's made the landscape of what we do quite unsafe. So
yeah,
so the challenge for the team, keeping the team safe, keeping them emotionally supported as well. We've had a lot of deaths in the last couple of years, sadly. So the work is really, really challenging, but from a rewarding perspective, I wouldn't be doing anything else. The team, they're so passionate. They can see the light for so many people, and when we've seen those brilliant outcomes for people, it gives you that kind of that passion to go on,
yes,
because we know people can change, and we know that people
yeah,
can have really fulfilling lives, but people need a lot of help.
yeah, yeah. Wonderful. I, I, yeah, I'm sure it must be, as you say, challenging. But and I'm so glad you've said that you chose to celebrate, because I think it is really important that you
Yeah.
celebrate the wonderful things you do. I appreciate it, the situation isn't improving as a whole, but you clearly are making a difference, and that's wonderful. Natalie, perhaps we could sort of take a look at you give us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular organisation for you.
Yeah, so I've been around, well, I've been about 20 years in public sector. So
Yeah,
prior to coming to Simon on the Streets, I was working in addiction services, all around Yorkshire, Humberside, managing criminal justice services. So my background was very much working with mental health and addictions. Um, when I was in Leeds, I'd worked with Simon on the Streets. Obviously, they're a charity that have been around for a lot of years. And when I was
yes,
working in addiction services, I knew of the charity, and I never worked directly in homelessness until I worked for St Anne's Community Services. And I had quite a big portfolio of various different services, including day shelters in Sheffield, day shelters in Leeds. And I think that's, my job's always been vocational. The work I do, it's always been a vocation for me. But there was something about working specifically in homelessness, which I'd never done before. And yeah, it just sparked something again in me that really, which I've always had, but again, it sort of reignited that. And the role came up. I actually knew the previous CEO, and he came to see me and said, what are your thoughts? And I was like, well, I love this charity. I would love to
brilliant.
take that role on. So yeah, so here I am, but quite a journey really, because I started this role in COVID. So I,
Right.
uh, I actually got the job in the February of 2020 and I had to give 3 months notice. And I thought, well, that's great. I had something like 15 different services. I thought that gives me time to support them and manage them through. And then, of course, in March, everything just went absolutely berserk. And I was going from all of the work that I'd done in the past. In all of these services was government funded.
Yeah.
So, I always knew where the money was coming from. And I was going to this small charity that was built on donations and corporate support and events, which I knew we wouldn't be able to. I didn't know
Yes.
how long for,
Yes.
but I knew we wouldn't be able to put on. So it was a scary time, coming out of a sort of safe, if you like, kind
Yeah.
of role to coming into this really challenging environment and world. And I look back and it's a bit of a whirlwind, and it was amazing, really. I mean, the team. There was a lot of charities who were furloughing staff around that time
Yeah.
because, quite rightly, I get it, my team did not want to be furloughed. They were very, very clear. They wanted to be out there. They wanted to help. They wanted to support. And the work that they did during COVID, when, in fairness, a lot of government services went to telephone only. So
Yeah.
a lot of addiction services, mental health, GPs. So the team became this kind of conduit for all of those different services.
Wow.
Supporting people, because homeless people were placed in hotels, so they were supporting people in hotels. And just what an incredible time that was, seeing that community, business community supporting, all of the local community coming out. We were getting phone calls from members of the public saying, where are all the homeless people? Where are they? Are they okay? And it was like, wow, like they really sort of
Brilliant.
sparked something. So it was a really scary but interesting year. I did a lot of work on. So I went to the board and said, look, everything's going online. We've got an okay online presence, but we need to do more. And we worked with an amazing marketing company who did some pro bono work with us for at least 3 months to try and give us a bit of a step up
Yeah.
to help our marketing and make sure we could do our fundraising online, because that's what charities were doing. So yeah, it
Cool.
was a real learning curve. But I feel, I look back and I'm like, wow, there's so many people have different. It's amazing the different viewpoints people have from COVID. I've got friends who are like, oh, it was brilliant. I spent all this time with my family. The weather was great. And I was like, it was probably one of the most stressful times of my entire life.
Yes, I don't. It's funny you say that, because I don't remember it being anything other than, we very much kept going, because we had lots of businesses that just didn't know what was going to happen,
Yeah.
because, as you said, especially ones that were dealing directly with the public, etc. There was a whole big issue going on, and I don't remember anything other than lots of hard work and a couple of
Yeah.
sunny days, which were nice. But and just being thankful and totally grateful that I had a garden to be
Yeah.
in, because that hit me when I spoke to a couple of people that said, I don't have a garden. So
Well, funny you should say that, because myself and my partner at the time, we're married now, but at that time we weren't, and we were living in a flat with no garden. And at the time, we used to say, "Oh, it doesn't really bother us," but at COVID, we were like, "Right, we have to have a garden wherever we
yes,
live. It's a necessity." You just don't realise, and so because
yeah.
the weather was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really was a really cool time if you could do that. I totally get, but
Yeah.
and so obviously you've had some significant challenges to overcome, and amazing how you've flexed in that way. And looking at whether it's from the challenges or the successes you've had, what are your biggest learnings about growing an organization like yours?
I think so many things to reflect on the last couple of years. I think when I came into the charity, I had a real sort of ambition about growth, and that we need to be in more places. And at that time, we were in Kirklees and Bradford, and what became apparent to me is that really for the work that we do, we have to have some really significant relationships with the local authority services. Now, we've always had that in Leeds. Leeds has been our sort of starting point, so
Yes,
we've got brilliant relationships. So even though we're not funded by local authority, we work very closely with all their services. They really appreciate the work that we do. We work together, so that's been incredible. But there's other areas where we've sort of parachuted ourselves in, I think, and it's just not really worked out because we haven't had that relationship, and also we've not had that funding coming from those areas. So I think looking back, I think, and we're in that sort of position now where we're really focusing on what we have in Leeds, and we're growing from that one area. And I
yeah,
think that's really, really important. I think that community, and certainly in my experience now of working with businesses who support charities, they love that local connection. They really want to
yes,
support, and I totally get that. And there's
yes,
so many amazing, incredible, and we're really fortunate. We have incredible corporate support, but again, I think concentrating that on one area and then looking
yeah,
at beyond is the way forward. So yeah, I think, like I say, I always had that ambition that because I knew that we were needed, and I still think that we
yeah,
are absolutely needed in more areas.
yes,
However, we've got to get, I've got to look after the team. As I mentioned before, about the nature of the work is really, really hard. So
yeah,
there needs to be a proper infrastructure to give the team the support that they need.
yes.
And I think we've got that now, and we've got that right. So I think we're in a much better position now than probably we've ever been to actually grow, even though we've reduced in size, if that makes sense.
Yes, sometimes it's it's almost taking a step back to take a step forward.
Yeah,
It's let's
absolutely.
consolidate, let's make sure everything is ready and right,
Absolutely.
and then go for it. Especially people. It's if we're going to grow, we've got to make sure we've got all the right people in the right place.
Yeah,
Um,
and even though it's a charity, but I say this to people all the time. As CEO, I have to run it as a business.
but
It is essentially, we have to. It's not about making a profit; it's about making a surplus that we can then rebuild
absolutely,
in, sort of build back into the charity. So I have to think about it in
yeah.
those terms.
Absolutely, and I've done. Um, I've worked with a few charitable organisations, social enterprises, etc., and it's all the same stuff. It's as you say, it's just we're using the profit for a different reason. We have to have
Sure.
that surplus, as you say,
Yeah.
to do more of the good stuff, and that's
Of course.
what's great about it. So I really get that, and I think we're a coach business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that is business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
Interestingly, I mean, I was really new to coaching and the approach of coaching, and I didn't really understand it. And I did have some coaching a couple of years ago with a group called Vistage, and I did some coaching with them for a couple of years, and it was a real game changer actually for me. I think for so many years, Vistage is very sort of high level business. I kind of went into it thinking this isn't for me. What can I bring? What can I kind of offer to this? And what can I kind of get out of it? But as you just said, it doesn't matter whether you're a charity, whether you're turning over hundreds of millions of pounds, or you're turning over a couple of 100,000, your issues are exactly the same. And that, whether that's right people, resources, financials, all of that stuff, culture. So it was a really, really big game changer for me, because I think I spent the first probably 3 years of Simon on the Streets too in the business. I was
Yeah.
too in it, and
Yeah.
I couldn't see out of it. And there was a reason, there was a reason that I had to kind of do that. But yeah, I think, I reflect now on things that I've learned, and coaching generally, picking up skills to be able to then, I accidentally now, without knowing that that's what was happening to me at the time, is that when I'm managing my team, I'm asking those questions that are coaching questions that I wouldn't have even realized were
Right.
coaching questions, and getting out. So that's been brilliant. I've really, really benefited from that. And I've just joined another coaching group recently. So a similar kind of premise. And I think that works really, really well. I think part of that as well is not just the one-on-one coaching, it's the group coaching with other
Yes.
businesses. And I love that. I think being CEO of any business can be quite a lonely place to be.
Very. Yeah.
And so having that sort of support, and that, like, your own community, sort of business community, again, I didn't know how much I needed that until I was in it.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting thing. And you said, I think, right, quite early on there, I walked into the room and not sure. But the interesting thing is there'll probably be at least 50% of the rest of the people thinking the same. And do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's so strange how the human condition seems to think, everyone else has got this, everyone else has
What have
nailed
I
this.
got to offer? Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that businesses are, although they're different, they're all the same. I remember doing one of the first group coaching events we did sort of 20 odd years ago now with my business partner at the time. And we had different businesses there. And I remember there was a connection between, we had get this right, a precision engineering company. So they turned metal to a very high tolerance, made clever things. And a lady that was a holistic vet. And they were all on it. The biggest connection with these two businesses that were totally different in
Yeah.
everything they did, and yet they're sharing ideas. Well, we did this. Oh, I never thought. And how business ideas are so transferable if you've got an open mind. Because it's
Yeah.
just, look, obviously I don't treat horses, but I do have customers, and how does that work for me?
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating. And whether it's from any of the sources you've mentioned or anywhere else, do you have any favorite quotes or sayings about business life in general?
I mean, I've always joked about it, but one of the things probably that I've kind of lived by throughout my whole career is better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And that's mainly because I'm just one of these people. I think, when people do the colours, when you do the business stuff, and
Yes.
I'm not a details person. I'm a very
Yep.
much, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Let's just get it done and see what happens. And this is why this charity is perfect for me, because in previous roles, it's been very, everything's very targeted and outcome based, and you have to do things a certain way. And I've always really struggled with that.
Yep.
Whereas the great thing about this charity coming in was that it's actually about setting our own outcomes, being able to flex when we need to, which of course there's no more flex needed than there was during COVID.
Yep.
And so I've always kind of gone with this kind of, I'll just crack on, and then if it all goes wrong, I'll just say sorry later on, it'll all be fine. And touch wood, so far it's all right, but it's probably not the greatest thing to role model, but that I have to be honest about
Yep.
that.
It's really interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. I think that's you'd be the red in the colours thing that we call it the D in this. It's interesting, but that mindset of I remember our founder is a very successful guy saying to me many years ago, and he said he believed he was successful as he was because he'd made more mistakes than anybody else, not despite it. And I'm not suggesting you made mistakes, but the for me it was the mindset of, look,
Yeah.
we do something, we'll get an outcome. We can work with the outcome and adjust.
Oh,
But if we do
absolutely.
nothing, it,
Then you never know, and this is the thing. And I think, I've always been so brutally honest and transparent with teams, whoever, and with my management team, with the staff, because there's no point not being. And so I'm very much, I think my team kind of know I'm very, there's never anything they won't know. I'm very honest, whether it's about the money coming into the charity, how we're doing, what I think about certain things. I'm pretty sort of transparent with that. But yeah, and I always encourage people that the mistake stuff, like you say, it's such a big part of life, outside of business. I think people have to be allowed to make those mistakes, because like you
100%.
said, that's and own them and take responsibility for them, rather, there's no, if I'll say to the team, I've said it, oh God, I've really messed up, I've done this or not, I'm dead honest about that. And I think if you role model that, people feel more comfortable about saying, oh God, actually I did. You don't want people to make mistakes all the time, but you need to give them that space sometimes to be able to do that.
I think the phrase I love is about you're allowed to make mistakes, but only the same mistake once.
Once yeah, that makes sense.
And I know it sounds silly, but you do get the people that go, well, didn't you do that last week? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What happened? Oh, the same thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So, but
definitely.
but I think that's where again systems and communication come in, because one of the beliefs I've always had with my businesses are, if everyone in my team has the right attitude, and if they don't, I need to work out why. But let's assume they do, and I do. Then, if there's a problem, it can only come down to systems or communication,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's my responsibility to make sure those are right. So
Yeah.
it's allowing people. And the other thing that came to mind was there was many years ago a story about it was a computer company. I think it was either Honeywell or Hewlett Packard. It really doesn't matter who, but a big organization. And every new recruit they got, they gave them. I think they actually got permission to do this. They printed out a whole bunch of get out of jail cards from Monopoly, and
Right.
they said, so as soon as you make, when you make your first big mistake, don't waste it, but big mistake, you just come in, give us the card, tell us what you've learned, and nothing will be done or said about it.
Wow.
And I just thought, what a great way of
That's
giving
brilliant.
people permission to try
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
that's brilliant. That is really, really, yeah, really, really clever. And it's the culture, isn't it? It
yes,
goes back to that culture of the organisation, and making people feel like they can come. The worst
yes,
thing is if people feel like they can't tell you that they've done something wrong, or they want to do something but they don't feel that they can ask you to do it.
yeah.
And I've been in, last 20 odd years, I've been in those situations myself, and it's really, really hard. So it's that workplace culture, isn't it, that's really important.
Yes, and I think one of the challenges leaders have to address is whether it may not, we may not be running a blame culture, but it's the perception that we
Yeah,
allow to be created, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't. If you had a problem, you came to me, you do everything's fine. But if you perceive that there's a problem, for whatever reason, so we actively have to undermine any beliefs out there that are unhelpful in that way.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And Natalie, still on the learning front a little bit. I'm keen to know what you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far.
Poof. Well, every day is a school day. That is true. I've definitely learned that. I think when I came into this role, and I remember in my interview, they said, is there anything that you think is going to be difficult, or is there anything that you think your skill set doesn't kind of cover? And I said straight away, well, I've never had to fundraise. I don't know anything about fundraising. And they said, oh no, it's fine. We've got a business development manager. You don't have to worry about that. And then obviously COVID came crashing down, and I absolutely had to worry about that. And I think what I've learned about myself is, if you ask me now, or would you go back to education, and is there anything you'd want to learn? I'd be like, absolutely not. But actually, I've really enjoyed kind of learning. So, I put one of our fundraising administrators went on a fundraising diploma, and I kind of did it with her. So
Brilliant.
I was doing this diploma alongside her. I wasn't doing it; she was doing it, but we were doing all the assessments together,
Brilliant.
because actually everybody else who was on this diploma course, bless her, and it was just after COVID, so it was all distance learning. They were all in big teams of fundraising teams, and there was just literally her and me, because we'd lost our main fundraiser who'd left just after COVID, and it was a really difficult time for fundraising during COVID. I think
Yes.
even now the charity sector really struggles because so many people left the field because it was such a stressful time.
Yes.
So we were in that situation. So I sort of went through all of that learning about what it means, stewardship, all these terminology that I'd never heard of. And then similarly, I've just done a recent thing in the last year with marketing. So again, been on a real journey. And I think, yeah, I think I've learned that, I always knew I was quite resilient, and I don't think I knew how resilient I was until COVID happened, and then starting here. I think I've learned an awful lot. You can never know it all, and I knew
Yeah.
that from the beginning. But I've absolutely loved those journeys of the fundraising journey, the marketing journey. I'm on a different journey at the moment where I'm sort of reposition myself this year as looking at being the face of corporate. So we had a corporate fundraiser for a year and a half, and when he left before Christmas, I thought, you know what, I really want to get under this a little bit and understand it, and I feel like there's loads of opportunities, and we're not getting in front of them, and I don't know why. So I'm going to spend the next year putting myself in that, and that's what I keep doing. I've sort of done that every year. It's a different focus, and I think I would never have imagined coming into this role that that's the sort of thing I would be doing.
Brilliant.
I think the title CEO is so broad in charities. It's probably not what you think it is. I am hoovering the office before board meetings, and it's hard, making people take. It's not, there is no what's the word, high ranking in my world in charities as CEO, and neither should there be. I'm quite happy to be doing all that stuff. But yeah, I think I've learned a lot about my own resilience, about my passion. I mean, I said to you at the start, these roles for me in the last 20 years, when I left, I did my A levels, and I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to go into law. But instead of going to uni, my law teacher said, look, I've got a friend in a big law firm. Why don't you go take a year out? And in some ways, it was the best and worst thing I could have ever done, because that year of working in a law firm, I was like, this is absolutely not what I want to do. And working in that kind of corporate sector. And then I kind of fell into this stuff through that. So I was actually temping, and my CV had court work, because when I was working at the law firm, I'd been in and out of court. Ironically, I worked on evictions, evicting people in the early
Right.
2000s, when solicitors used to do a lot of that.
Yep.
And so I was picked up by this temp agency to say, oh, we need somebody who's familiar with court, and it was for an addiction service called the Drug Intervention Program, and that's really where it all started for me. I was working in this charity sector, working with people coming through court, people who I knew actually from growing up. And I was astounded, because that wasn't a life I was familiar with, and I couldn't understand how that had happened to them, and it hadn't happened to me when we grew up in the same area.
Yes. Yeah.
I grew up in Hare Hills in Leeds, so there was things that my parents did very well to keep me away from that I had no idea, and it really opened up my eyes to things that were going on that I had no idea about. And I think from that moment on, and that was in the early 2000s, I knew that I would never go back to the corporate world, and that this was the sector, and there's something about that vocation and that feeling like you're making a difference, as corny as that sounds, because believe me,
Not at all.
there are times when I don't feel like that. I've had those conversations with the team where we just feel like it's such a slog. Homeless numbers are rising. We can't take any more clients. We haven't got the funds to take on new outreach workers, but we want to do more. And you feel like, am I making a difference? But we are, we do
Yes.
what we can in our own little bits of the world, and that's what we're doing.
I 100%. I honestly feel it's really important that you do, having had this conversation that you do. It's because it's what we, it's what we achieve. Appreciate the problem. It's not your problem or responsibility that the problem is getting bigger. You're doing as much as you can with the resources
Yes.
you've got, and that's all we can do. And
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
and I honestly believe that should be celebrated strongly. It's not just about, yeah, okay, but appreciate the problem is that. So why I asked you the question at the start, because unfortunately I thought you were going to say it's getting worse, not better, which
Yeah.
is a very
Yeah.
sad state of affairs for what is still a very wealthy country.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think, and I think just for clarity, whatever you do, celebration is key because it builds resilience.
Yeah.
It's like it's what we say to ourselves when we ask ourselves the question, why the hell am I doing this? It's,
Yeah.
well, do you remember what happened last year when we did this and that happened? And if we don't do that regularly, if we haven't got
This
an answer, because sorry, go
Yeah.
on.
No, no, you're right. And the celebration thing, I think that was a real learning curve from last year with the 25th anniversary. So we're actually having a summer street festival this year.
Really?
And, it's an event in Leeds City Centre to raise money, but also the primarily about celebrating the work that goes on, celebrating the support that we get. We get phenomenal support from the business community, from the local community. So it's really that opportunity to, because you're right, we need to celebrate that more. We need to talk more about the success stories. And, I suppose we spend, as a charity, me particularly, and some of the team, when we're out and we're doing, whether it's I go see a corporate about a charity partnership, or I'm giving a speech at an event, it can all seem very dire. It's because
Yes.
obviously we're talking about the horrendous things that are happening. We had 17 deaths last year, and the breakdown of it's not just a number to us. These were people who
Yeah.
we had relationships with, we loved. We were the only people in their kind of network, and we were there with them right at the very end. And it can seem very maudlin and down, and it is, but actually we've got to also say, well, okay, so we lost four of the people who died last year. They died in hospices, which we made sure they got into, because there is no seamless path from the street to palliative care.
Yeah.
And that's the way, and actually we had people who died with dignity. They didn't die on the streets. They were
Brilliant.
reconnected with the family at the end. They're the celebrations. As bleak as that is, they are, and they have to be celebrated.
Yes. 100%. I couldn't agree more, because it's, as you say, it builds resilience in it, and you're doing great stuff. You deserve to do it, I would suggest. Um, so looking forward then, Natalie, for a little while, what does the future look like for you guys, and what do you see as the main challenges, if any?
So I think a couple of challenges for us this year. I think we, as I said at the start, we are predominantly now Leeds. We are focusing all our
Yeah.
outreach efforts on Leeds, which has been, I think Leeds City Council really happy to hear that. I had a meeting last week and they were really pleased, and looking at how do we plug some more of those gaps. So it's concentrating on the work that we're already doing in Leeds, but also looking at where are some of the current gaps. So for example, there's a lot of gaps at the moment with people who are given accommodation, but then they need that support to stay in that accommodation. So we've got a lot of clients that we work with on that at the moment. We're working with, we're working with a very different client group as well, it's fair to say, than maybe 6 years ago. So we've got a lot of people who are in their cars, who are classed as homeless but sleeping in their cars, that they can't get support from local authority for various reasons. I think, many, many years ago, they used to say, what was it? You're only 5 paychecks away from homelessness. It's probably one now. That
Wow.
is the reality.
Yeah.
So we've worked with a couple of people very recently who have been referred to us by family and friends. They had a business, they really good business, doing really well, lovely family, 5 holidays a year, really nice cars. And then business starts to dwindle and everything just spirals and spirals. And then, we've had a couple of those people to support this year, and that's been really, really hard. So there's a lot more challenge in terms of the nature of the client group that we're supporting as well, and the different types of people. We're definitely having issues, and we've got real challenges over the drugs that people are taking at the moment. So my background is addiction services, and
Yes.
20 years ago, really, people who were street homeless, or the people who were really in the throngs of entrenched addiction, you were talking heroin and crack cocaine.
Yeah.
And as bad as that was, behaviorally, you kind of knew where you were. People were either really, really up or really down, and there was, but you could manage it. It was manageable. And now there's a lot of synthetic substances, and the impact that is having on people's behavior is just off the chart. So, one of the reasons we had to make the decision of coming out of Bradford this year was around safety of the people
Right.
who work for us, because people's behaviour and challenging behaviour has just reached new levels. People carrying weapons, and so that's for me, CEO, that's got to be my.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've got we're a charity looking after these people, but actually, I've got to put the safety of the team first. So that's lots of challenges this year in terms of type of client group, how I support the team, and then the biggest thing obviously is the finances, and making sure we keep going. It has been a really tough year
Yeah.
financially. It's the toughest year. Bearing in mind, I've lived through the COVID years with no money coming in from anything. this actually is the worst year we've had as a charity. So it's tough. I'm doing lots of different things, which, you know, if they all come off, brilliant. But I'm just in that sort of stage of I've got lots of things bubbling away and some great conversations and making loads of really good introductions to different corporate businesses, because I think for us corporate is the key a little bit in terms
Yes.
of where there's still a lot of potential for
Yes.
support. So that's what kind of I'm trying to do. So they're the challenges for us this year, and you know, we can. Again, the great thing about the charity is that we're not bound by any targets or restrictions. We can change the way we work to suit the changing client group. We can, you know, or I can sort of say, right, let's restructure, let's do something different, let's have a different way of working. And the team are great with that because they like the fact that they can have that flex with the people that they support. So yeah, it's a really it's a weird one for me because I keep saying this, although it's the toughest year I've ever had here. It's been I'm really kind of enjoying the different types of work that we're doing as well, which
Yeah.
sounds a bit odd, really. It does still keep me awake at night, worrying about the money. But in addition, but I am also really enjoying, you know, watching the way that we're working, looking at the stuff we're doing, and looking at, and for me personally, doing some new bits and pieces as CEO. So lots of challenges, but we just, you know, I'm confident. I do feel really positive about the next couple of years. We just got to get, this year's going to be a slog. But I think a
Yeah.
lot of businesses are having exactly the same experience. So I know I'm not on my own with
Yes.
that. Just got to get through this year. And I think, you know, next year will be different. You know, there's lots of things that will come off next year that are happening now. So it's just get through this year, rebuild in Leeds, make some great connections in the way that I've kind of been doing this last few months, and still be here, and hopefully next year I'd like to be able to recruit a few more outreach workers as well, because I know that as I said to you at the start, the state of the sector is just not good, and
Yeah.
we know we need to be here for a long time.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, and Natalie, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I really appreciate your time. And for anyone that's watching that would like to get in touch to understand that, you know, more about what you do or maybe how they can help, what's the best way of making contact with you?
Yeah, well, we can. I mean, I'm happy to. I don't know how it works. If I can leave my details, I'd be happy for people to make direct contact with me at
Okay.
my email address. LinkedIn's always a good one for businesses, particularly. And if you have a look on our website, everything on there, from all our fundraising events for the rest of the year,
Brilliant.
to different types of sponsorship packages, everything's on there. So initially, if someone wanted to just have a chat with me, I'd be more than happy to do that and jump on a call. But do have a look at our website, and, you know, have a read of the social media that we put out, because we do, in addition to being a charity that's very practical, obviously, but we have two charitable arms. One is obviously all the practical stuff that I've talked about,
Yeah.
but secondly, it is about education and raising
Yes.
awareness. Because there's still a lot of stigma attached to homelessness and the reasons why people not only become homeless but stay homeless. So I think there's still a lot of work for us to do on that. So I write a lot of blogs that you can see on LinkedIn. There's loads of stuff on our website. So if you're just interested in knowing a little bit more, any of those routes would be brilliant.
Brilliant. Well, look, it'd be great to swing by another 6 to 12 months and just see what next stages are in the development. But for
Yeah.
now, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me. It's been brilliant to talk to you.
Thank you.